Good afternoon, everyone. It's Dr. Patmos, and it is April the 14th. And I'd like to do a quick video today about Dr. Robert Malone's appearance at Cpac a couple of weeks ago. Um, as you probably know, if you follow Cpac, Dr. Malone has been a regular attendee and presenter at that Political Action Committee conference for the past several years. Well, he appeared again this year, and I always listen to those presentations to hear what he has to say. And his presentation this year was uh, just as interesting, excuse me, as presentations he's had in prior years. What caught my attention, though, was his biography on the Cpac website describing this conference and describing his bio as a speaker. And I was reading through it, and it contains an obvious misrepresentation. The Cpac bio says that Dr. Malone was an associate professor at the University of the Health Sciences. That is the federal university or medical school for people who are in the military and uniform services like, Army, Navy, and so forth. If you look at Dr. Malone's CV, he there says that he was an adjunct associate professor, not an associate professor. Well, you might say, well, what's the difference? There's a huge difference, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But the point I'm trying to make is that the bio on the website, that which was advertised to the attendees and to the public all over the world about Cpac, was that he was an associate professor. His CV says something other than that. So, which is it? The other thing other point to be made is that at this Cpac presentation, Dr. Malone talked a lot about a global effort to censor dissenting points of view. And he has positioned himself as a victim of such an effort. So I've asked the question, first of all, was Dr. Malone an associate professor at the Uniformed Institute of the Health Sciences or Uniform University of the Health Sciences? Or was he an adjunct faculty member? And what is the difference between the two? And how can you tell whether he was a true associate professor? And then I asked the question, at what point does embellished credentials or do embellished credentials invalidate one as an expert? We know the word censorship is a buzzword, as if no one should ever be censored. But think about it. You can't just write a letter to the editor in the newspaper. They're going to censor it. They read it and determine whether or not it's worthy. If you write a scientific article and submit it to a medical journal, they're going to subject it to peer review to determine whether or not it's worthy. That's a form of censorship. At Cpac, if you wanted to get up on the stage and talk to the audience, Cpac is going to determine who's allowed to get up on that stage. That is a form of censorship. So censorship is all around us. You go to any medical conference, not anybody can be up at the podium speaking. You have to be vetted. You have to have credentials. You have to be a bona fide expert. You can't just let anybody up there at a major medical conference to give a speech. So it raises the question, is there ever a role to censor experts? And I would argue that if an expert is misrepresenting their credentials to the public, that is something to consider for not allowing that person to have the podium. If you say, no, everybody has a right to say what they want to say, that's fine. People can say what they want to say. But when you're on a global stage or a national stage as, quote, an expert, and you're presenting information that will influence public opinion around the world and influence health policy around the world, and you're not the expert you claim you are, and you don't have the credentials you claim, or you have misrepresented your credentials, like in this case, where he's referred to as an associate professor, and I have gone through a very diligent search. I cannot find any evidence to support that claim. I think the most logical explanation is that he was an adjunct associate professor. Those are two very different things. So, is that a grounds to censor someone or to deny them the microphone or the podium? I think so. If I went to a conference, I expect that the speakers are actually legitimate, vetted, and that their credentials that are represented to me as an audience member are valid and been verified. I would not be happy to pay money to go to a conference to listen to a speaker who says they were an associate professor when they weren't. So, anyhow, the research is all down below in the text. I invite you to read it and tell me what you think. But it's very important. And I think Dr. Malone isn't the only one who does this. A lot of people do this. There's a tendency to conflate an adjunct or a clinical faculty appointment with a genuine faculty appointment. In fact, one of the appointees to the ACIP had to, I forget his name right now, but he had to resign because he had made the statement that he was a professor at, I think, George Washington University. And George Washington University came out and said, he's not a professor. We don't even know who he is. He did have an adjunct faculty appointment at one time, but he's not a faculty member. So, what is the difference anyway between adjunct and a formal faculty appointment? And why should you never conflate the two? And why should people who do conflate the two be held accountable? Well, first of all, to be a faculty member at a major medical school or major university, you have to have all the formal credentials, and you have to apply and be vetted and be appointed to the faculty. It's a very rigorous and demanding process to get a faculty appointment, and there are obligations around having a faculty appointment. Eventually you become tenured, you have to publish, you have to teach, and you have to have a track record that is evident. And true faculty members are paid, they're paid employees, and they have a very detailed documentation evidence in the medical literature of their affiliation with the university. That's a true faculty appointment, assistant, associate, or full professor. What, on the other hand, is an adjunct faculty appointment? Well, adjunct faculty do play an important role. I know I served as an adjunct assistant professor 3 different times in my career, and I certainly did things for the university. I taught classes and I supervised medical students and residents. But the important distinction is that I didn't go through the same kind of a vetting process that a true faculty member goes through. In an adjunct appointment, it's really a courtesy appointment. It's largely ornamental, and it's given to doctors who volunteer their time to teach students. In a lot of medical schools, students rotate through a doctor's office. They spend time with a doctor in seeing patients, and the doctor takes the student on and shows them the ropes and so forth. And for that kind of volunteer teaching, many, if not most or all medical schools offer these physicians who do this a clinical faculty appointment. That's what I've had. I've had 3 clinical faculty appointments, and one at the University of Nevada School of Medicine, one at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, and one at Oregon Health Sciences University. That was some years ago. I don't have any active adjunct faculty appointments now, but I did for several years, and I really appreciated those roles, and I enjoyed them, and I think they're meaningful roles. But they are not genuine faculty appointments, and you cannot conflate the two. If you're an adjunct assistant professor or an adjunct associate professor, and you say that you're assistant professor or associate professor, you are being dishonest. That is a misrepresentation. They're very, very, very different levels of appointment. The adjunct appointment is really a courtesy. It's you get a document suitable for framing that you can put up in your office that impresses your patients and your parents and so forth. But it's not a real faculty appointment. And I think that if a person intentionally, willfully, or negligently conflates these two and uses them interchangeably, it is a form of misrepresentation, and it shouldn't be allowed. And people who do this should be held accountable. And I think that conflating faculty appointments with adjunct faculty appointments is really unprofessional conduct and should be identified as such. And I think unprofessional conduct gets you pulled off the microphone. Sorry, you don't get to go to the podium and speak if you're guilty of unprofessional conduct about what your credentials are and what they aren't. Thank you.